Okay, so that's basically setting up an environment. So now let's talk about actually like using an environment. All right. So if you wanted to do some coding and have access to all these packages, you do it a couple different places. What we're going to mainly use in this class are notebooks, so Jupyter notebooks. So what I've done in this environment, which we can see if we list, oh, I guess we don't need to, is that we've installed Jupyter Lab. So let me go to that real quick so you can just see that. So basically Jupyter Lab allows you to basically create notebooks where you can type code and get like inline results, and also you can write other types of chunks, so things like text and markdown and whatnot. So it's a nice place to work. This is effectively how I generated all the example modules in the course. So to install that into an environment, which I already did, but it'll be installed if you copy my YAML file, is you can just do conda install here, right in this Jupyter Lab, or you can install with pip. You can see those there. Note that this is the Conda Lab's a newer version. There used to be Jupyter Lab's a new version. The older version was called Jupyter Notebook, and you can still install that here. But I'm just doing Jupyter Lab. I think it's a little bit better. It allows you to have multiple notebooks open and whatnot. Okay, so basically you got to, again, go into the environment that you're interested in. So I'm going to go to Conda, Activate, West Virginia View, and then I just type in Jupyter Lab, and that should launch Jupyter Lab. And it should do this in whatever your default browser is. So on my machine, my default browser is Firefox, so it should just load in Firefox. Yeah, so you can see I just got a new browser here. All right, so this is just one example document. So you can see over here you have this tree where you can navigate and find files on your computer. Here's the document. Basically, it's made up of a bunch of cells. Here I only really have two types of cells. So I have markdown cells for writing text, and then code cells. So what's kind of cool here is that basically if you click on a cell that has code in it and you run it, it actually just gives you the results kind of in line. So you can kind of break things up into chunks and then run all your code. You can have text that explains things or explains results or how you did something in line. So anyway, it's a pretty nice way to work. All right, so that's Jupyter Lab. This is one of the most common ways people work in Python. Again, you can also have multiple notebooks loaded. It's pretty nice. You make one from scratch. I'm just going to do File, New, Notebook. And it's going to ask the kernel. And they do select there. So if I did, for example, x is equal to 2, print x. And then I can run that, and I get my print, right? So anyway, that's one way to do it. So if you don't want to do it this way, I just want to show you a few other ways that you could interact with notebooks. Okay, so the first option is if you don't want to try to set up anything on your local machine, you don't want to install into Conda, create an environment, bring in all the packages, you can use some remote services. The most commonly used one is what's known as Google Colab. So if you go into Google Colab, this is mine here, then it's basically allowing you to run these notebooks, but instead of doing it from your local machine, it's doing it in a web browser. And instead of using your local computer's hardware, it's mainly going to use a server at Google. So effectively, Google has downtime on their servers, and they let people use that downtime to run processes. And that's effectively what Google Colab is. And you can also do things like have access to a GPU if you need to, do processing with a GPU. But it actually works pretty similar. So here I'm just running this code cell here. Right, so that's another example. So that's an easy way to do it. Generally, a lot of the like packages that are used commonly, you can easily get in here. Some things that are more specific might be a little bit more difficult. So that's something you can feel free to play with in this class. Another option which I like is to use a kind of code development environment. What I like currently what I'm using is VS Code. So VS Code is currently open source. It's free. I used to use brackets, and it kind of got superseded by VS Code. But this allows you to basically create plain text documents for a variety of different languages, including Python. And you can even use notebooks inside of it. So if you want to install that, you just go to VS Code, download. Again, it's free. And let me show you what that looks like once it's installed. So here's my VS Studio Code here. All right, so open it up. I'm going to do File, Open File, and I'm just going to grab this basic one, which is the first module, code module. And as you can see, what we have here is, again, kind of a similar setup. So we've got cells that we can run. We've got markdown cells in there. Again, you can basically work in a notebook. Note that it should see your environments, your Anaconda environment. So if I click on this here, you can see it should list out my environments. Sometimes if you just create a new one, it won't see it right away. Sometimes you have to like close it or reboot or something. But you can see all my environments are there. So you have to make sure you're clicked on the right one. So like this one, I believe I wanted to use my West Virginia view one, so I click on that. So then I should have access to all the packages and stuff that are there. There's also this little terminal at the bottom where you can see output, this is problems, stuff related to Jupyter, debugging, the terminal, right? So I actually prefer this. One thing to note is if you do want to use this, you can't just download VS Code and then start using Jupyter Notebook. You have to install some extensions. So install extensions, if you click on this little thing over here, just search for Jupyter Notebook. Where'd my search go? Oh, there we go. So I'm just going to type in Jupyter here. I believe this is it. So you can see mine's installed, but if you install that, then you should be ready to go. So anyway, that's another option. That's actually my preferred way to do it. There's tons of other extensions too if you work with other languages like HTML or Markdown or CSS. I use this a lot for like web development. Yeah, so anyway, it's a really cool environment to work in. You can also download themes. Yeah, like I use this Groovebox theme I really like, but anyway, there's a bunch of different color themes and stuff you can download and install if you don't like the look of it.